Alright, we are back. I mean, where I was going with this before we got so rudely interrupted here, looking at it, I mean, we all knew what Chavez was in for. I mean, we know what she does. This is rules for the little people, but not for people like her, who are the political elites that run off with this. Yes, she's going to go to Florida where it's free, but, I mean, she's going to come back here and rail against Florida and say, oh, well, Poppy, they're killing people left and right. Look at Ron DeSantis. He's holding these. He's holding these. Oh my God, I can't talk this morning. He's holding restrictions down, and he's killing Grandma because of it. Okay, puppy. But no problem running down there. And this is the thing with this too, that she's going down there and going maskless. Now, there's no mask mandate in Wisconsin. I don't believe there's one in Georgia either. But in both places, within the last 2 weeks, I have seen numerous people walking around in places where they don't need to mask up, all masked up. It's a matter of personal choice. No matter if you are in a place where you need to do it or not, you still have the option. You always have the option. But you know she doesn't believe in this. All right. Let's grab one from Fox Business. CDC tells Americans to avoid cruises regardless of vaccination status amid COVID-19 surge. From Paul Best. The CDC sounded the alarm on cruises Thursday amid a surge in pinko-pox cases, nationwide, raising its travel warning to the highest level and telling Americans to avoid cruise travel regardless of vaccination status. The virus that causes the pinko-pox spreads easily between people in close quarters on board ships, and the chance of getting the pinko-pox on cruise ships is very high, even if you're fully vaccinated and have received a COVID-19 vaccine booster dose, the CDC wrote in its new advisory. The federal government shut down cruises altogether at the beginning of the pandemic. Then in June, after 15 months of a no-sail order, the CDC allowed cruises to restart trips under strict conditions. Several dozen ships are being investigated by the CDC due to pinko-pox cases on board, but the agency does not release the exact number of infections. The Cruise Lines International Association called the CDC's decision particularly perplexing on Thursday, arguing that the cruises provide one of the highest levels of demonstrated mitigation against the virus. Look, you really shouldn't be on a cruise right now. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be on a plane right now. On these large public places, I would argue that you probably shouldn't be on a bus right now. If the Omicron, I mean, it's not that deadly either, but I mean, if the Omicron is if it's as transmissible as they say that it is, you shouldn't be on any of these things right now. But especially a cruise ship. Like, when all this started, I was planning on running down to Florida, grabbing a cruise, because I'd never been on one before. I'm very calmed by water, and I've always wanted to try it out. And I found out that it's less expensive than you would think it is to go and do something like that. Hell, the biggest amount of money that went into something like that would have been the fuel to get down to Port Canaveral to go run off for your cruise, or take the plane, one of the two. Those would have been the most expensive parts of me going to do this. But it's like, I looked at what happened, what was it, in California, when they had the cruise ship docked and they just were holding people on board the cruise ship. Wasn't it for like a month too? When all this first started. I know it was more than 2 weeks. I know it was like 2 weeks to slow the spread, but they held all these people on the ship for a month. In dock, as a quarantine measure. And that was where I lost almost all my interest to ever be on a cruise. So yeah, I mean, if this is really that transmissible, I mean, supposedly it's not deadly. Supposedly it's like a flu. So you get really sick for a little while, you get nice and good and sick, and then, you know, you move on with your day. But if it's this transmissible, then no, that's not an enclosed area where you're surrounded by people all the time. No, that's not someplace you should be. But that's what we see for that. Speaking of entertainment venues, from the New York Post, Joe Rogan forced to cancel Vancouver show because he's not vaccinated. From Samantha Ibrahim. Joe Rogan won't be seeing Great White North anytime soon. The 54-year-old podcaster canceled his sold-out April 20th show in Vancouver due to Canada's current pandemic travel mandate. During a Christmas Eve episode of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, the host said the move was preemptive, believing it would have been canceled by default because he's not vaccinated. Currently, travelers and tourists are required to show proof of vaccination to get around the country. I should probably say this because I haven't yet. My 420 show that's sold out in Vancouver. I don't think that's happening, Rogan said. I don't think I can even get into the country. I'm not vaccinated. I'm not going to get vaccinated. I have antibodies. It doesn't make sense. He later confirmed on Facebook that the upcoming Vancouver show has been pushed off to October 24th. Vaccination is required for participants who are traveling and attending certain events. Rogers Arena, where Rogan's show is set to commence, requires proof of vaccination. Back in September, the New Jersey native revealed to fans that he had contracted the pinko pox after for months telling viewers not to get the vaccine. Let's listen.
Hello, friends. So, I got back from the road Saturday night, feeling very weary. I had a headache, and I just felt run down. And just to be cautious, I separated from my family, slept in a different part of the house, and throughout the night, I got fevers and sweats, and I knew what was going on. So, I got up in the morning, got tested, and it turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone, everything. And I also got an NAD drip and a vitamin drip, and I did that 3 days in a row. And so here we are on Wednesday, and I feel great. I really only had one bad day. Sunday sucked, but Monday was better. Tuesday felt better than Monday, and today I feel good. I actually feel pretty fucking good. That's the good news. The bad news is we have to move the Friday show in Nashville. It's going to move to Sunday, October 24th.
All right, so that's an old video. That's from, when the hell was that? That was a while ago when he went back and admitted to it. In an Instagram video he posted at the time, Rogan stated, "I got COVID. I apologize, but we have to move the Nashville show to Sunday, October 24th. Much love to you all." And of course, they have to come out because it's the New York Post and say, ivermectin has not been recommended by the Food and Drug Administration as a treatment for COVID-19, while the study results of monoclonal antibodies have been mixed. Because it's supposed to be all about the vaccine and nothing else. Just get the vaccine and don't do anything else. But that's what we have for that. Here's a bizarre one, because you would think that you would want to do this before you get on the plane, not mid-flight. Woman self-isolates in airplane bathroom for 4 hours after testing positive mid-flight. From Bill Shiver. A school teacher from Michigan recently went to great lengths to keep from spreading the pinko pox, voluntarily spending 4 hours cramped inside an airplane bathroom after testing positive for the pathogen on her way to Iceland. Marissa Foteo said she was halfway through her Iceland Air flight from Chicago to Reykjavik last week when she felt her throat start to hurt, so she pulled out a rapid testing kit that she had brought from home and diagnosed herself. "I just took the rapid test I brought into the bathroom, and within what felt like 2 seconds, there were 2 lines indicating a positive test," Foteo said, told Today after a post on TikTok documenting the experience went viral. The video, which has been viewed by more than 3 million times, shows the vaccination. Jeez, I don't know what's going on with the Blaze or why they have overlaid stuff over the top of this, but I can't read what that says there because they're trying to do a Reuben advertisement over at the same time. The tiny airplane bathroom while traveling 30,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean. Upon receiving her diagnosis, Foteo, who works as a preschool teacher in Chicago, apparently opted to remain in the plane's bathroom stall for the remainder of the flight. There were 150 people on the flight, and my biggest fear was giving it to them, she told Today. In her TikTok post caption, Boteo jokingly wrote, "Shout out to Iceland Air for my VIP quarantine quarters," with hashtags luxury living and I'm so lucky. Thankfully, the teacher said a kind flight attendant named Ragnhildur Rocky, Eric's daughter, provided her with care during the flight, bringing her snacks and beverages and periodically checking on her to make sure that she was all right. Yeah, well, like I said, first and foremost, you probably should have checked that before you went up, before you got into the plane. If that's what your concern is, you should have known that before you got off the ground. But second off, I mean, when you look at a bathroom for 4 hours, and if you indeed tested positive mid-flight, you've already spread it all the way around. Now, most of these airlines have a very, very, very heavy HEPA filtration system that will take care of the most of this going out of this, but it's just, you're not doing, I mean, you're only making yourself miserable if you're going into the bathroom and staying there for 4 hours on an isolation. That's all that you're doing right now, is making yourself miserable because you spread it around already. But, you know, do you. Here's one from Fox News. St. Anthony of Fauci, patron saint of medicine, on track to collect largest federal retirement in U.S. history, according to a report from Andrew Mark Miller. St. Anthony of Fauci, patron saint of medicine, said recently that he does not plan on retiring soon, but if we were to step down as the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the 81-year-old would reportedly be eligible for the largest federal retirement package in American history. According to Forbes auditors at OpenTheBooks.com, Fauci's 55 years of service in the federal government qualifies him for an annual retirement package of just more than $350,000, which would increase through annual cost of living adjustments. St. Anthony is currently the highest paid employee in the federal government, bringing in $434,321 in 2020, which is more than the president, the highest ranking commanders in the military, and the roughly 4.3 million employees in the federal government. There's no way I'm going to walk away from this until we get this under control, Fauci told ABC's Jonathan Karl earlier this month when asked about possibly stepping away from the job. I mean, that's the purpose of what we do. That's a mission in life. In the middle of it, I'm not going to walk away. $350,000 a year. Oh, why? $350,000 a year to be wrong about everything that you've touched. And the worst part of it is I mean, nobody knew who this guy was before the pinko pox outbreak. I mean, there were people that knew that he had something to do with AIDS, but I think that was more research after, you know, people started paying so much attention to him. $350,000. That's your taxpayer money at work. Let's grab one from the Daily Wire. Chicago Teachers Union issues list of demands for a return to in-person learning that must be met by Monday. From Virginia Kruta. Chicago Teachers Union, Local 1, issued a list of demands late Thursday, telling Lori Lightfoot that their concerns should be addressed prior to students' return to in-person learning, which is scheduled to happen this coming Monday, January 3rd. Our union proposes that Mayor Deadfoot and her CPS team must put mitigations in place, including COVID-19 testing, by January 3rd to ensure safety as classes resume. If mitigations are not in place, in-person learning must be paused so the district can implement proper safety measures, CTU Local 1 tweeted Thursday afternoon. The list of demands were not limited to a requirement for all staffers, students, vendors, and volunteers to take and provide proof of a negative PCR test within 48 hours of returning to classrooms, 300 testing sites as well as take-home tests for any students or members of the community who could not get one. Implement pauses in in-person learning if the pinko-pox case numbers reach certain thresholds, returning to classrooms only when mitigation efforts provide results. Reinstate the health screener policy that was used during the 2020-2021 school year. Provide KF94, KN95, or N95 masks to all students and staff who need them, including pediatric-sized masks for students who require those. A mandatory shift to remote learning if 20% of the staff are quarantined due to exposure or infection. Principals must have the authority to transition individual classes to remote learning if an individual in that class tests positive. Yeah, imagine being so scared of this, especially with Omicron, that you're coming out with this massive list of demands. I do think part of this is the fact that they just don't want to go back to work. You know, driving or taking public transport across Chicago sucks balls. Driving across there sucks balls to begin with, but taking public transit to go into the classroom where there's a good chance that you might get shot for gang violence, yeah, no thank you. More Fauci news. Fauci points out that many of the kids included in the count of the pinko-pox hospitalizations actually tested positive after being hospitalized for another reason. From Alex Nitzberg. No shit, Sherlock. Are you saying the numbers are pumped? St. Anthony of Fauci, patron saint of medicine, noted during an interview on MSDNC that many of the children included in the pinko-pox hospitalization numbers are actually hospitalized for reasons completely unrelated to the coronavirus, but then included in the statistics because they tested positive after arriving at the hospital. St. Anthony, who is the chief patron saint of medicine for Joe Biden, and the longtime director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, made the comments while responding to a question about why there has been an increase in kids at the hospital with the pinko-fucking-pox. First of all, quantitatively, you're having so many more people, including children, who are getting infected. He said that hospitalization among children is much, much lower on a percentage basis than hospitalizations for adult, particularly elderly individuals. But that the large volume of infections among children, even with low-level rates of infection, you're still going to see a lot more children in the hospital. St. Anthony said that kids in the hospital with the coronavirus are there with COVID as opposed to because of COVID. Which is weird, because I was told that it was racist to come out and say that people go in and do stuff with COVID instead of because of COVID. I was told it was bigoted to say that how many people died with COVID instead of because of COVID. Let's listen.
And I want to ask specifically about hospitalization. One of the recent concerns, I'm sure you're getting asked a lot about this. How do you explain the sudden increase in hospitalizations among children? I mean, if Omicron is less severe and 15 to 20% less likely to send someone to the hospital, why are we seeing this sudden increase in children at hospital with COVID?
Well, that's a good question, and there are two things that contribute to that. First of all, quantitatively, you're having so many more people, including children, who are getting infected. And even though hospitalization among children is much, much lower on a percentage basis than hospitalizations for adults, particularly elderly individuals. However, when you have such a large volume of infections among children, even with a low level of rate of infection, you're going to still see a lot more children who get hospitalized. But the other important thing is that if you look at the children who are hospitalized, many of them are hospitalized with COVID as opposed to because of COVID. And what we mean by that, if a child goes in the hospital, they automatically get tested for COVID, and they get counted as a COVID hospitalized individual, when in fact they may go in for a broken leg or appendicitis or something like that. So it's overcounting the number of children who are, quote, hospitalized with COVID as opposed to because of COVID.
Boy, does that sound familiar. Doesn't that sound a little bit like, oh, well, this guy was driving along stupidly on his motorcycle, and he slammed into the back of a semi without a helmet on at 90 miles an hour. But he mysteriously, because he was tested on the ER bench, mysteriously died from COVID because he tested positive. Or the guy, my favorite one was the one, I think it was in Slovakia, where the dude fell off a ladder and landed headfirst. And they actually tried to justify that one. The dude fell off a ladder, landed headfirst on the ground, and died of COVID. And they tried to justify that one by saying, oh, well, he died of COVID because he fell off the ladder because he was losing oxygen because he had the COVID. He shouldn't have been climbing the ladder. All right. Let's move off some flu stuff. Let's grab the rest of it here. We're almost done already. NBC News. Don't forget to declare income from stolen goods and illegal activities, IRS says. If you find $1 on the street or embezzle from your employer, that's all taxable income, as well as your paycheck from flipping burgers at McDonald's, one tax preparer said. From Ben Popkin. As you wind down the year, cleaning out drawers and emptying wallets of receipts, don't forget to report to the IRS any income you brought in from drug deals, bribes, stolen goods, prostitution, or other illegal activity. Are you serious right now? Are you serious right now? According to IRS Publication 17, the IRS wants taxpayers to include on their forms income from illegal activities, such as money from dealing illegal drugs. Make sure you put that on Schedule 1, Form 1040, Line 8Z, or on Schedule C, Form 1040, if from your self-employment activity, the IRS wrote. The agency also requests that if you steal property, you must report its fair market value, but only if you don't return it to its rightful owner in the same year. These somewhat obscure provisions went viral this week after a popular finance meme, social media account, and daily newsletter author pointed them out. The IRS didn't immediately return an NBC News request for comment. Humorous as they appear on their face, the statutes are law and have been on the books for years. Prohibition-era gangster Al Capone was indicted on tax evasion after persecutors alleged that his stated income didn't match his lavish lifestyle. No shit, Sherlock, and everybody knew what he was doing. But yes, if you do a drug deal, make sure that you report it on your 1040. How stupid do these people think that we are? Seriously. I mean, at least launder it before you do that. Jeez. From the USA Today. Down the barrel of a gun, how Second Amendment activism can be a gateway to extremist ideologies. From Will Carless. The Atlanta Gun Show, held over the weekend in late September, had everything one might need for the coming apocalypse or civil war. Flamethrowers, hundreds of rifles, thousands of handguns and knives, body armor, survival kits, and medical supplies. Sprinkled among swords, boxes of sutures, and night vision goggles were the insignia of modern extremist far-right, a bright yellow patch for the Oath Keepers, militia group, holsters and clothing engraved with the logo of the extremist Three Percenters. A stall at the back sold paperback copies of the Anarchist Cookbook, which describes how to make homemade bombs, along with a book called Two-Component High Explosive Mixtures. Nestled in the middle of the show, at the Atlanta Expo Center, a man proudly displayed Nazi memorabilia, medals, swastika patches, and a model of German amphibious vehicles. Occupied by toy Nazi soldiers, people crowded around his table asking questions about buying and selling Nazi stuff. Gun shows like this have long been a part of the connective tissue between mainstream conservatism and the American extremist movement. The vast majority of gun owners are law-abiding citizens, but experts and former members of the extremist far-right said a passion for gun rights often serves as a gateway to radicalization, often eagerly exploited by recruiters and leaders in the movement. It's one of those things that far-right activists will use to get in the door, said Jeff Shep. He was once leader of the National Socialist Movement, the largest neo-Nazi organization in the U.S. Now he advocates for leading the life. Just like illegal immigration, guns, the gun rights issue, all of these things are gateways that can be utilized. This dystopian novel, The Turner Diaries, has inspired white supremacists and far-right extremists, including dozens of domestic terrorists since its publication in 1978. The premise of the novel is that Americans have been stripped of their guns by a tyrannical government. The first page refers to the gun raids and says what a blow that was to us and how it shamed us. All that brave talk by patriots. The government will never take my guns away, and then nothing but meek submission when it happened. Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to what's going to happen with some of the big L and small L libertarians when the government does inevitably sweep by to do whatever it is that governments do, because I have a feeling a lot of them are just going to sit down and comply and be on the boxcar. But as far as this goes, I mean, you look at some of this stuff, and yes, there's going to be some crossover between these movements. There absolutely will be. And yes, people are going to look into this to come back and try to take advantage of some of this stuff. I'm sure that's what the Oath Keepers are looking there for. Like, I would never join the Oath Keepers or the 3%ers because I think they both blow. But, you know, they can come out here to these places and say, hey, you want to buy a bunch of guns and then join the 3%ers? Nothing bad will happen, we promise. But that's what we see from that. Let's grab one from the New York Post. Teacher who stalked kids online for LGBTQ club responds to backlash. From Salim Algar. A California middle school teacher who admitted she totally stalked a student online activity to identify candidates for an LGBTQ club said her explosive comments were made tongue-in-cheek, according to a new report. Oh, yeah, no, I got caught with this, so I was only kidding. Buena Vista middle school staffers Lori Caldera and Kelly Baraki ignited an ongoing controversy in the small Spreckles Union School District after they spoke about their recruitment approach at an October LGBTQ conference. When we were doing our virtual learning, we totally stalked what they were doing on Google when they weren't doing schoolwork, Caldera said at the gathering. One of them was Googling Trans Day of Visibility, and we're like, check, we're going to invite that kid when we get back to campus. An attendee recorded the remarks sent to them, and sent them to journalist Abigail Schreier, who later wrote about the matter. The school's LGBTQ club, called UBU, has since been suspended, and the teachers have been on administrative leave pending an ongoing internal investigation. I know why they're actually on an investigation right now, but I'll talk about that in just a second. In her first comment since the controversy mushroomed, one of the teachers told the San Francisco Chronicle that she and her colleague did not set out to surveil kids and were using approved GoGuardian tracking software. The program, which saw widespread adoption during the onset of remote learning, allows teachers to see what their students are doing in order to prevent online misconduct. I see a site that's emblazoned with rainbows, Caldera said. How am I not going to notice that? Look, for remote learning, as far as that goes, this is one of the big reasons